Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I am the CEO and founder of GSD Done Studios. We're a premier AI and quantum studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, California. We love artificial intelligence, quantum computing, metaverse, Web3 companies. In fact, today we have 121 companies in our portfolio from 52 countries around the world. And with that, I'd like to introduce my incredible guest, Kendrick White. He's the rector of the university and vice rector, University of Nizhny Novgorod. He's a vice rector today for commercialization Almaty University in Almaty, Kazakhstan. Yes, Kazakhstan. He's a senior level global executive, corporate finance specialist, and pioneering entrepreneur with a background in high-profile leadership roles associated with market technology, commercialization, VC investing, and portfolio management. Some say he's like the Harrison Ford, the Indiana Jones of technology. He goes places where other people don't. He serves as an advisor and confidant to enterprise founders, boards, and members of the executive team. Much of his work is focused on PE, VC capital, fund management, angel round investing, as well as corporate finance advisory, including enterprise restructuring, partnerships, and PE finance raising. So with that, I'd like to bring Kendrick on. Hi, Kendrick. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Gary, how are you doing? Nice to see you.
So I got a question. How in the world do you go from Stetson University to freaking Almaty, Kazakhstan?
Oh, geez. You know, I had a long career in Chicago in banking, strategic planning, did an MBA there after Stetson. But I was interested in Russia from an early age. And I went over to the CIS and started working in 1992. And it was like jumping out of a plane without a parachute. And I never looked back. Very exciting adventure I've lived for the last 30 years.
How was it? I know you lived up in Nizhny Novgorod. How was living in Nizhny Novgorod? Did you feel like a native?
And I was an advisor to the governor, and I was trying to help to develop and stimulate small business development. And I'm an economist, so I studied the Soviet Union, I studied Gosplan, and I knew that when it was going to go bankrupt, it would take 40 years to make a market economy. And I wanted to go over there and basically help young people to understand what is the market like. It took me a long time to adapt because I didn't speak a word of Russian when I went there.
Now, how was it coming in? When you first went to Russia and moved to Nizhny, what did you do?
I was working out of a business center. I was with the U.S. Peace Corps. I had left my job, my apartment, my life in Chicago and joined the U.S. Peace Corps for the first ever business program, advising young people on entrepreneurship. And I was working with the Epicenter think tank run by Grigory Yavlinsky. And I was one of the young economists there developing the new reform program. And my job was actually working with young entrepreneurs, and it was crazy time there. There was bankruptcy everywhere. There were food lines. There was just mass unemployment. Physics professors working as gypsy taxi drivers, and so I came in there, and it was part of a program. And I developed training and education programs for young people on how to negotiate with foreigners, how to make a business plan, how to study the market and look at developing their newly created businesses. I mean, I had one student of mine bought a bankrupt factory and for like $50,000 and turned it into one of the major pharmaceutical producers, which was sold to Stada years later.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, you've seen those stories of incredible success, people from nothing to being, multi-millionaires. So how was it when you were living up there? So you moved to Nizhny. How long did it take to get integrated and life, like dating and everything else? I mean, it's entirely different. How long did it feel comfortable?
You know, it didn't actually take me very long. My personality and my character is pretty quick to adapt to a new environment. And I made friends. I wasn't shy at all. I hardly knew any Russian, and I went out and started dating some local girls. And I made friends. I was the founder of a Rotary Club, so I kind of tried to attract people to me, and then use those mechanisms and those foundations to teach people on what the market economy is like. And so a lot of people came to me. We had an American library there at the local linguistic university. We had the Peace Corps Center. We made a business library program with a lot of Dun and Bradstreet books and things like that. I've helped to form an international community association. We couldn't call it an AmCham. We didn't have enough Americans, but we had a lot. There were a lot of other German investors and stuff. So we created the International Community Association of Nizhny Novgorod, which is still going strong today. And so I created structures that would help me to meet people and make relationships, and then doing a lot of teaching and training. I adapted pretty quickly, actually.
No, that's great. I was a co-chair of the AM Technology Committee for 20 years, and it was amazing because we saw a lot of good Kendrick. We saw the relationship go up. We saw it cast down very quickly, right, in terms of the opportunities and everything. But you go down through it. I mean, some incredible minds. I mean, wide country from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok, all the way up north, down Central Asia. I mean, incredible opportunities. So as you look at it, how did you come? As you're going down through it, you see these opportunities. You worked at the PWC, by the way. Where were you at PWC? Were you in Moscow, or where were you?
No, I spent the entire 30 years in Nizhny Novgorod. So when I finished the Peace Corps assignment, I'd actually been on a 2-year leave of absence from my bank I worked at in Chicago, which was ABN AMRO Bank. But the president of the bank gave me a 2-year leave of absence during Peace Corps, so I could have come back to my old job. But I got recruited by Price Waterhouse. So in 1995, I joined PW as an advisor to the Russian government. Again, we started working with larger scale companies that had been privatized and trying to help them to restructure, get new investors, get new owners, and build new teams. And so the Price Waterhouse work was me basically developing a corporate finance office of Price Waterhouse in Nizhny Novgorod as an advisor to the Russian Privatization Center. And that worked out for a couple of years. I mean, it was supported by technical assistance, first US, then the British Know-How Fund. But my idea was to train 22 Russian consultants on how to advise businesses and spread that knowledge and build capacity in the community. And so I worked with them to, 95 through 98. And then I got headhunted out of them over to the EBRD. And that was an amazing work. And again, it was based in Nizhny Novgorod. I'd already gotten married by that point. So I'd fallen in love with a local girl in Nizhny Novgorod. And we had a storybook wedding. And it was absolutely fantastic. We were married in the Beef Stroganoff's church. Yeah, it was a church that looks just like the church on Red Square, but it was built by the Stroganoff family. So we always called it the Beef Stroganoff Church.
Wow,
it was great. Yeah, my mom came over for the wedding, and we had tons of friends, and we built an amazing life there. And the EBRD, our fund was a $30 million fund investing in basically my former students. So we were developing snack food companies, pharmaceutical companies, and all that. And it was quite an amazing experience.
What about this Quadriga? What was that about?
The Quadriga. The Quadriga, that's the name of the German fund management company I worked for. So Quadriga was the fund manager for the EBRD financed Central Russia Regional Venture Fund. So they managed 2 out of 11 different funds in Russia at that time. I don't know if you're familiar with what was going on, but that was the first generation of venture capital funds. And they had 11 of them around the country with different fund managers. Some of the fund managers were not very successful because it was really pioneering. Others were very successful. Quadriga Capital Russia was first based in St. Pete, and they hired me to run the Central Russia Regional Venture Fund, and they were based out of Frankfurt. And I learned a lot from them. I'd never worked with a German management team before, but it was fantastic.
So what made you decide to do the Technology Commercialization Center in Nizhny Novgorod?
Well, after I finished investing the fund, I had an opportunity to maybe go on with Quadriga to raise a new fund, but they wanted to go in different direction. And I wanted to focus on high tech because the most fantastic projects that I worked on at the Quadriga Fund were the high tech projects, and I really got an interest in that. And so when I finished the fund, I got my carried interest. I was very happy. I was well rewarded for hard work, and I became a business angel. So I started one of the first business angel clubs. And in this situation, I'd followed the example of my uncle from Chicago, who formed one of the first business angel clubs in Chicago back in the 80s. And as a kid, I would go and see how that business angel club would work. And I thought, that's what we need in Russia at the time, because we didn't have any business angels. And so I convinced some high-worth individual locals to form a club. And we created Start Invest, led by a dear friend of mine, Edward Kadovich Fiaxel. And, that allowed us to start to mentor projects coming out of the university at an early stage. And I just really ended up loving that. Not all my projects were successful, but some of them were very successful. I invested in a project making a plasma laser, which effectively worked on telecommunications transmissions from the ground to satellites. And that project was fantastic. Another was a single photon generator, which is an element of a quantum computer to read qubits. So these are the types of things that I found were amazing scientists, and they were coming out of these universities, and they had no backing. The universities didn't know what to do with them. The scientists that were working on national security, well, they pretty much had plenty of funding, and their technologies went on to Moscow. But a lot of the other scientists just got money coming down from Moscow periodically, and they really didn't know what to do with it. And so I got really interested in that. And I started really studying in depth. Why does the American system work so well? What's the difference between a Russian university and an American university? And after really studying the situation in depth between 2005, 2006, 2007, I understood in the United States model, a guy by the name of David Allen had created a proof of concept center back 35 years ago in the University of Colorado in Boulder. And the idea was to work with the tech transfer office, but it wasn't just looking at whether a technology idea was unique. They were trying to understand what's the commercial value of that technology idea. And in that work, they could develop a commercialization roadmap and understand, should this be licensed? Should we buy and pay for patenting on that? Should we form a team? They tried to develop a strategy to maximize the value of the IP. And that was the first example in Colorado. But other examples popped up, and everybody now today recognizes that one of the most successful examples is the Deshpande Center at MIT. So I looked at that and I understood Russian universities had no idea about what a proof of concept center was. And so I wanted to set up a seed fund with this Russian fund of funds and a group of business angels. And in about 2011, we decided we're going to set up this fund and work with universities. But when I looked at all the projects at the university as a due diligence, they just weren't ready for funding. So I went to the rector of the university, Nizhny Novgorod, the Lobachevsky University, and I said, look, what about developing a more modern technology commercialization infrastructure? And he said, well, that would be great, but we have no idea how to do it. What would we do? And I presented him a roadmap on how to modernize the tech transfer function of the university following MIT's model. And he looked at it and said, that's fantastic. And he agreed to incorporate that roadmap into their own roadmap for modernizing the university, according to a huge program run by the Ministry of Science and Education called the 5100 program. And the university got the grants. And when the university got the grants, the university rector hired me as the vice rector. I was one of the first ever, and maybe the last foreigner as hired as a vice rector. Yeah. But it was an amazing experience. I really was very proud for that, and glad to be able to really implement that program. So 2013, I created the Technology Commercialization Center at Lobachevsky as a prototype example. And that included all of the tech transfer function, IP protection, proof of concept, industry advisory. We started working with industries. And what I really understood is that all Russian universities were focused on getting top-down grants, money from the top, vertical funding, and they didn't have any horizontal relationship with industry. Only a selected number of polytechnic universities understood how to work according to the orders of industrial buyers. The rest were just working with Moscow. And what I was trying to do is build a system which would create the horizontal relationship with industry and to create a bridge between industry and universities. That would be Russian industry and international industry partners as well. And that's what our technology commercialization focused on, and we picked biomedical devices as a technology segment. And over 4 years, we created 23 biomedical spinouts. We formed a partnership with the University of Maryland, funded by the U.S.-Russia Foundation, and we called that the U.S.-Russia Innovation Corridor. And so we took our spin-out projects and our teams, and they went through our acceleration programs, and then we brought them over into the University of Maryland to go to the MTech Venture Accelerator for an accelerated 2-year program, where we checked the U.S. market strategy. And then here's the key: we brought all of the students back because I wanted to develop a program which would reverse the brain drain. Because I was really hoping to support the development of a young generation of innovation entrepreneurs, which would build a new, more diversified Russian economy. And that's what my whole program was focused on. And the really difficult thing about Russia is that, that's going on in parallel to other things that you read about. But there were a lot of people in the government who were supporting this very liberal drive to modernize the economy, modernize the universities, develop, new tax structures to encourage business angels. So Russia really is like, Winston Churchill said, it's this riddle wrapped in a mystery. It's very hard to understand. But I felt that support, and the business angel community was interested in that. The venture capital community was interested in that. And we really created a model which was picked up by like 23 other universities around the country. Wow. And I think in 2017, there was an association created in Moscow on the basis of the Moscow State University and Innopractica, and that was called the National Association of Technology Transfer, which used our model as an example to spread to other universities around the country. That's the way to modernize university, reverse the brain drain, attract young startup entrepreneurs to stay in Russia and develop their companies there. And it was a great success until it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And then what about Marchmont? What's going on with Marchmont? Do you still have that?
Yeah, I started Marchmont. That was my family, my own holding company that I started after working at the EBRD. So I started that in 2005. My goal was to use Marchmont as a platform to raise a $50 million venture capital fund. And I was well on the way to doing that until about 2008. And you, Gary, might remember 2008 had a difficult summer and fall.
I remember. I remember going into the Omega watch dealer and buying a watch with my debit card because the ruble had gone down so much that it was the only way I could conserve the value of the ruble. It had dropped so fast, and they didn't change the pricing. So I hear you directly. I mean, those are the times, but it's happened since then. I mean, it went from this friendly environment to people that weren't really encouraging out of Americans and foreigners to come in and to help. It's changed a lot since those days, right? The open arms uppity.
Yeah, Marchmont was doing, I had to recover Marchmont after the 2008 crisis, but I was still doing consulting advisory work and tech scouting work. I was working with large international companies all the way to 2021. And I was working with rectors around the country. I was helping big clients to form transparent partnerships with Russian universities. And so even in spite of all the events of 2014 and 2015, the situation still normalized. 2016, 2017, I was working with international companies, bringing them into Russia, bringing them into Skoltech, out to Novosibirsk and Tomsk. And I always felt very welcome on the part of local authorities across the country. There was a real interest in that, because what we were trying to do is normalize the process of business and industry working with universities. And universities wanted that. They wanted that for their students. They wanted that for the local community. Business angel clubs across the country were interested in what we're doing. And those were the good times. And unfortunately, everything changed, as you well know.
Yeah, no, I know it. It changed a lot. So what made you decide to come to Kazakhstan?
Well, there were a lot of laws that were changed during 2021 around COVID, and it made the laws that were changed for education made it extremely difficult for foreigners to get access and develop partnerships with Russian universities. And I could see that. And a good friend of mine was working in Astana, the capital city of Kazakhstan, and he knew my work at Lobachevsky. And he said, we're going through the same things in Kazakhstan. The universities they have great science, but they had very little understanding of how to commercialize deep tech. So the World Bank had been financing a lot of programs across Kazakhstan and Central Asia to encourage entrepreneurship and startups. And so there were a lot of IT guys and business and accelerators and programs. But what the government was worried about, and this goes back 1 year ago, I was there in October, and they said, look, we only have a limited number of deep tech scientists, and we want to encourage the students to become scientists in the future. But to do that, we need success stories where the scientists participate in startups, they make some money, they buy a fabulous new car, a new apartment, and basically they wanted to improve the relationship between industry and the universities. And they saw my model as the exact kind of bridge that could create that corridor of communication between the universities, the scientists, the researchers, and basically the industrial community.
That's great. So what are you working on now? Let's talk about what you're working on today in Kazakhstan, and tell us about Almaty University. What's happening exactly?
Well, the bottom line is I basically decided to come to Almaty, and I wanted to replicate the experience of the Technology Commercialization Center, but not only in one single university. I wanted to effectively create a system that could be spread around the country. And in that case, I chose to work with AlmaU as one of the top business schools in the country. We're not a science university. We don't have wet labs and biology and chemistry, but there's great management, graduate school of business, finance, innovation, entrepreneurship. They have the acceleration programs and all this. And I thought this is the perfect base to work from in creating a technology commercialization center surrounded by a business school. And what we could do is work with other science universities around the country. And I spent a lot of time talking with the head of the Science Fund of Kazakhstan and the World Bank and other people. And they said, look, this kind of model really makes sense, because what we can do is we can provide kind of advisory services to the university transfer office and help them understand how to manage that translational research phase, where you're working with a professor and you're saying, yes, we need a technology idea, but sorry, nobody needs it. But if you shift the research over this way a little bit, if you shift it, then in this situation, if the results come through on the R&D, then you can patent that, and you can sell a license on that patent, or create a spin out, or start doing joint research with industrial partners. And that's what I effectively am in the process of creating. I arrived here just over 5 months ago, and I've started to form a team. I formed a venture mentor network. I'm forming in December an industry advisory board with a nice mix of Kazakh industrial owners and big global industrial partners. And what I'm trying to do with them is understand what their problem statements are. What are their challenges? And then I translate that into a language which is understandable by the professors and the scientists and the researchers. And I try and coax them into solving those problems. So we work kind of as a technology scouting brokering operation, but it's actually much more than that, because at AlmaU we want to create a graduate level training program to teach, to create the next generation of people with the skills to do this work and get careers in tech transfer offices around the country, venture capital, venture capital funds and things like that. Because I see there's a huge interest in Kazakhstan. Western business interests are here. What's interesting about Kazakhstan is, I mean, historically, this is the place where a lot of people were kind of put, during the Stalin time, and people that were kind of exiled here, and they didn't know where they landed. And then they got here and they look around and it's like, wow, it's absolutely beautiful nature. The people are welcoming. And the culture here looks at foreign executives and says, hey, you've got something to contribute. So we're going to help you here. We're going to help you adapt. And I found the population here is very open. It's very friendly. It's open to Americans. It's open to Chinese. It's open to Turkish. It's open to Russians. For my family, my Russian wife, my kids all speak Russian. And so everybody here speaks Russian. But in the university, everyone's speaking English as well. And, so it's a really friendly kind of atmosphere. And I think that's an attitude of Central Asia. And I think it comes from its historical roots. And they want to make themselves a bridge between different cultures. And I really like that.
Well, it sounds like you got set up. And how much is the culture living in Russia?
The culture is pretty similar. I mean, I'd say the Russian culture is a beautiful culture. I mean, I was interested in the Russian culture since my childhood because my mother was an artist and she studied with a Russian woman when I was growing up in Cape Hayes, Florida, on the Gulf Coast. And so I was fascinated by Russian culture from an early age. And here in Kazakhstan, you find the same kinds of museums and music and concerts. And so you're walking around in Almaty, and to some degree, it almost feels a little bit like Moscow. You have the huge opera theater and so on. But in addition to all the Russian influence over a century, you also have the Kazakh influence, and you have Kazakh authors, and you have people referring to this. So it's very interesting. But I think that I think initially after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a reaction about becoming independent. Yeah. And I think a lot of the countries in the CIS, they went through that. They had to understand what it's like to be independent after being part of that Soviet Union. And that was difficult for some people at that time.
Kendrick, what do you do for fun down there? How many kids do you have?
I've got 2 kids. I've got a teenage daughter and a son, both teenagers. They're both in school here.
How old are your kids?
My daughter's 15. My son's just 18. And we like to go hiking.
You go hiking. What do you do for fun, though? You go to Astana, or do you go to China, or what do you do? You hike?
Yeah, we go. So far, we're going hiking a lot around the city here, the botanical gardens, the mountains. There's ski slopes here. We're planning a trip this weekend to some lake outside of the city. It's phenomenal nature here. I was here about 25 years ago with the EBRD, and we had an adventure tour. We went up hiking in the mountains. We were on the rivers fishing. We were on camels going across the desert. And Kazakhstan really has an interesting.
That must have been really interesting. So you went on camels.
Yeah. And it was really funny because what we brought the CEOs of our investment projects.
Camels across the desert?
Yeah, we all took a bunch of camels across the desert, and we brought our CEOs. And as we were racing, the camels are spitting at each other and trying to, spit on the people riding them, and so it was amazing.
So they're camels, and are they native to that area?
Oh yeah, there's lots. This is a huge agricultural center, Gary. You can't imagine in the Soviet Union they had 100 million head of cattle and sheep in northern Kazakhstan.
I mean, camels are different deal. So are they running wild there, or where do they come from?
I don't know if they're really running wild. I think they're owned by people, and they kind of go out and graze in the desert. And
well, you were saying spitting at each other when you're riding them.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, my friend got spit right in the eye by my camel, and I beat him.
Really? Now, how? That's interesting. They spit each other to show dominance, or what is the deal? They just don't like each other.
You know, I was probably kicking my camel too hard, and he was probably trying to spit at me. And they just have this terrible habit of doing that. And you know, it's really funny because if you treat them the wrong way and you're standing next to them, they can just turn around and spit at you. And it's
Oh
their
my
way of
God.
saying, you know, be nice to me.
You know, so you're down there. Is your dog getting adjusted to it? Is she adjusting to the environment there? How is it for her?
Yeah, my daughter is fine. She's in a private school here. My son is in a technical college, and we're all adapting. I mean, it is a new environment, but I mean, from my kind of character, I'm pretty quick to adapt, and so I think my kids are understanding that this is a great new adventure, and that's how I'm positioning it with my wife. And I'm just anxious for my wife to get here. She's still in Russia, but when we have the whole family here, I think this is a new chapter in life. Which is a great thing. You've got to do that in life. You've got to make life an adventure.
No, well, it sounds like you're doing great things. I just looked at the time. We're running a couple behind. So closing thoughts, Kendrick. You're doing an incredible job in Kazakhstan. I know you love the region, and it's unfortunate that a lot of us had to leave Russia, unfortunately, because there's a lot of great people there, great technology, but current political situation is really incredibly bad, right? Not a good situation at all. Evil. Right?
Oh, it's heartbreaking, Gary. It's heartbreaking. I feel bad for the young generation, you know, that really are having to leave, and it's hard for them to even figure out where to go. It's heartbreaking. I have a lot of friends that are really in a tough emotional state, and yeah, a lot of people in Europe are not very sympathetic to that. And I understand. I get everything, but it's sad how it's all turned out like that.
Yeah, no, you're right. So closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you, Kendrick?
Hey, I'm in Almaty. I'm in Almaty. My email is k.d.white@almaty.edu.kz. I'm on WhatsApp. I'm in LinkedIn. I'm happy to show people my new city that I love here. And if you're interested in investing in technology in Kazakhstan and Central Asia, talk to me. I'm your guy. I'm going to help out.
No, great. And what's the best way to get a hold of you? LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on WhatsApp. You know, my number is 910-398-4736 +7. And I'm on WhatsApp. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on email. Very easy.
No, that's great. Kendrick, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. To all of my audience out, my name is Gary Fowler. I am the CEO, president, and founder of GSD. Get you done ventures still. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay. Get out there, and always even your dreams because they come true. Thanks a lot, Kendrick. Thanks to all of you, and stay tuned for another exciting edition next Tuesday.
Thanks for having me, Gary. Take care.